The coronavirus pandemic makes a delay to the Brexit transition period inevitable, David Lidington has claimed. The former Conservative MP and de facto Deputy Prime Minister to Theresa May warned pursing a hard exit from the European Union could trigger a public backlash. He also said the bloc's values and access to its markets could help boost Britain's recovery from the global pandemic. Mr. Lidington's warning came as post-Brexit trade negotiations resumed remotely from London and Brussels. And he said officials from both sides knew little could be achieved while the pandemic continues to wreak havoc across the continent. COVID-19 makes extension inevitable, he told the Dutch NRC Handelsblad newspaper. There is not enough bandwidth to pay attention to Brexit in Whitehall or the European Commission. Mr. Lidington insisted this should shape the decision-making processes on both sides of the Channel. He urged London and Brussels not to throw up new trade barriers that could hinder their economic recovery from the pandemic. We suddenly live in a different world. I recently stood in line for the supermarket and a fellow villager said to me, "If only we could just talk about the Brexit sideburns again," he said. Because it is so fresh, it is impossible to make predictions. I hope both sides understand that now is the time to resist protectionism. We know that after the stock market crash of 1929, the trade barriers of that time worsened the depression. Boris Johnson remains adamant Britain will leave the EU's single market and customs union at the end of the transition period in December. His chief negotiator, David Frost, has refused to budge and is still aiming to conclude Mr. Frost even said he would reject an attempt by Brussels to request a delay to the trade talks. But Mr. Lidington warned the government to tread carefully when considering their next steps. He said, "People who use Corona to reinforce their buried Brexit stance are not popular right now. The crisis is also restoring confidence to bodies under attack. The views of government officials and scientific experts from the government are again appreciated. That trust is important for good political decision-making." 2 further rounds of trade negations will take place before a high-level meeting between Mr. Johnson and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in June. The Prime Minister's spokesman said, "This week we expect further constructive talks with the aim of making progress ahead of June, building on the talks to date which have identified the major areas where we agree and disagree." Downing Street has previously insisted ministers are prepared to walk away from talks with a loose trading relationship.